Well, hello everybody, welcome to Coding 101. My name is Kutla. In today's video, we're going to be doing a crash course on ES6. Now, ES6 is a version of JavaScript and is a very fundamental aspect of JavaScript that most languages like React or most JavaScript frameworks, let me say, not most languages, but almost every single JavaScript framework or JavaScript library requires that you know a little bit of ES6 before you can continue in learning that particular framework or library. So this is a very, very important feature in JavaScript, or is a very important part of JavaScript that you need to know about. So ES6 simply stands for ECMAScript 2015. So that is the sixth version of ECMAScript programming language. ECMAScript is the standardization of JavaScript, which was released in 2015 and subsequently named as ECMAScript 2015. So ECMAScript and JavaScript are both different in nature. ECMAScript is the specification that was designed in ECMA 262. That's basically a bit of history in ECMAScript. So in simple terms, it is a standardization for creating a scripting language. And it was introduced by ECMA International and is basically an implementation with which we learn how to create a scripting language. And JavaScript is a general purpose scripting language that conforms to the standard or the specifications that were laid out by ECMAScript. It is basically an implementation which tells us how to use a scripting language. Now, JavaScript ES6 has been around for like a few years right now, so it allows us to write code in a much more neater and a much more clever way, which basically makes the code more modern and more readable. So it's fair to say that with the use of ES6 features, we write ES6 we write less and do more. Hence the term write less, do more. Definitely suits ES6. So ES6 was introduced with several key features, and in today's tutorial we're going to learn about some of these key features. And by the time you finish with this tutorial, you're going to be learned up about ES6 and be happy to carry on with all the other aspects of JavaScript. So as always, before we continue with this tutorial, I do want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Our main objective is to help you become a better developer one video at a time. So check out for some of the videos that we have that really help you sink your teeth into JavaScript and really learn more about it. So we help you to become a better developer one video at a time. So please make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and if there's anything that you need from us, or if there's any comment that you would like to make, the comment section is available for you to do that. I'd be happy to respond. And if you liked this video, then like the video, but most importantly, subscribe. So without wasting any more of your time, let's get into some of these JavaScript or these ES6 features. So the first thing that we're going to learn about is the let feature. So you already know about the VAR feature. So wait, before we actually continue, I do want to tell you a little bit about the setup. We've just simply made an HTML file, and we've attached a JavaScript file through the script tag to it. So that's the simple thing that we did. So in defining a variable, most of the time we would use VAR, and we would say something like this: name is equals to Coding 101. ES6 introduces a new way of declaring variables, which is called let. So let declares block scoped variables, and the difference between let and VAR is actually that let is more into the scoped variable. So when I say a scoped variable, I meant to say that variable can only exist within these curly brackets that you see over here. So for example, if we were to have a function and we were to call it say hello, we are able to declare our variable with let inside of this function as such, but we cannot declare let a variable using let in a global scope. So that is essentially not allowed. So the difference between, and another difference between VAR and let is that when it comes to non-primitives, honestly, when it comes to all the variables, when you're using let and VAR, so let's say, so you have two variables over here. So I'm going to just say world over here. So the thing about let is that you can reassign a variable. So actually this is not the difference, it's a similarity that these two share. I'm going to teach you about another way of declaring a variable that was introduced with ES6 called Const. But I just want to finish up on the similarities between let and var, the fact that you can actually reassign a variable. Let and var allows you to do that. But there's another way of declaring a function called const that does not allow you to declare, reassign, or redeclare a function. So if I were to say, maybe say, let's say hello world over here, I cannot come back here and then say hello people over here. So this is actually not allowed. So if we were to run that, you will notice that on our so that is essentially not allowed. You cannot reassign something that you have assigned with const. So that's the difference between const, let, and var, is that const does not allow you to, after declaring a variable, to then after that reassign it. So if we are maybe going to go to our console over here, and we were to say const name equals, greeting equal to hello world, that's fine. And then after that we say greeting is equals to hello people, like this. So you could see that we get an assignment error that just simply tells us that we cannot reassign a constant variable. So that is definitely not allowed. So in ECMAScript essentially shows us that now there are three ways of declaring a variable, and most of the time people try to use let and const and not to use much of the var anymore. In fact, when I do some coding, I use most of the time const and let. So there's another aspect of that ES6 is introduced, and that is the spread operator. So the spread operator is simply 3 dots as such. So let's say we declare a variable. Okay, we declare a variable called array. We're going to call it ARR. And inside of here, this array, I think this would be better if I just did it on the console. So I'm just going to go to the console. So I'm going to declare a variable. So I'm going to just say const, and I'm going to call it ARR. And this is going to be an array of numbers for just like that. And so what the spread operator, which is just 3 dots like this, it allows us to copy that array, that entire array, by just using 3 dots. So if I were to just say console.log and then just say 3 dots are like this, that would essentially give us a copy of that that variable that you see there, that array over there. So it allows us to take everything that is inside of that array. This spread operator, it gives us a way to just literally just pull out a copy of that array. As simple as that. And so JavaScript, or ES6 rather, has given us a new way of iterating or looping through an array. So this is called the for-off loop. So ES6 has actually introduced us this. It is a simple for loop that allows us to iterate over iterable objects. It can be an array, it can be a string, it can be many different things. So it just simply allows us to iterate over iterable objects. So if I were to come over here and declare an array of numbers, so this would be like maybe let's say 10, 20, 30, 40. JavaScript gives me a way to iterate through those items in those objects, and I'm going to just say num of nums. So num is the iterating value, so it allows me, so it changes, it's not constant. So now I can just come over here, So now I can just come over here and I can just say console.log num, and it's going to print out each of those numbers individually, so you can see the way that happens. So yeah, so it's as simple as that. So it's a for-off, so it allows me to iterate through an array. So back then, to iterate through an array, you would simply you're going to have to say something like var num equals to 0. So this is the old-fashioned way, the old way to do it. Then you would say nums. You would say num is less than nums.length, and then I++, and then console log. So this is pretty much the old way of doing it. Oh, so and then you would have to say nums, because this is just an index. So this is pretty much the old way of doing it, even though I probably have not done it the right way. Oh, okay. So I think I see what the problem is because normally you would use I over here, and that's exactly what I think I'm going to do. I'm not going to use nums. I'm not going to use num to confuse you. I'm going to just use the old-fashioned I, which represents the index. So as you can see, this is the old-fashioned way of doing it. This is the new way of iterating through an array in ECMAScript. Let's refresh this. And then move on to the next feature in ECMAScript 6, which is template literals. So template literals is a way of concatenating or putting strings together. So let's say, for example, you have a string over here. It can be a string, it can be a number, because I'm going to show you that with template literals, you can just combine a string and a number together in a seamless manner, in a seamless way. So it allows you to substitute variables in a string. So let's say we have a number over here, which is 23, and then we're trying to console log, and then we're going to try and include that number inside of our string. So the old-fashioned way to do it would be saying I am, and then we would put a plus here, and then we would say num, and then we would say years old. So this is how you would practically do it previously, but now template literals allows you to seamlessly add in your something like this, an integration like this, into your strings. So I'm going to do it using template literals. So this would I would put in my backticks, and I would put my statement I am, and then I would put a $sign and a 2 curly brackets in there, and then I would just put the num, just like that, and then years old. And then if I do this, you can see that just like that, I've managed to integrate that variable that we've declared at the very top with this string over here to make one string. So it just allows you to work with strings with a string template much more easily than you would have to do previously. So imagine if you have like plenty of like variables that you want to substitute into your string, then you would have to deal with all these plus signs and figure out where you're going to put them and all that kind of stuff. So honestly, I feel like it's much more easier doing this than having to do it the old-fashioned way. So that's what ES6 has managed to introduce to us. The other component that ES6 has introduced to us is array destructuring. Okay, array destructuring. So array destructuring is the ability to access parts of an array without accessing them the direct way. So let's say, for example, you have an array over here again. This is an array of numbers. So the first item in the array, let's say, I'm going to put my birth date. Not exactly mine, but maybe somebody out there's birth date. And I'm going to first start off with maybe the day, which is going to be, let's say, 31st. And then the second item in there is going to be the month, which let's say it's the 11th month. And then we're going to put the year, which is 1994. So this is an array that contains our birth date. So ECMAScript, in order to access all of these elements individually, we would have to do something like this. Array 0, or we would have to say array 1, or we would have to say array 3. So now ES6 gives us a way to actually access those variables inside of the array and actually give them a name. So we could do something like this, const. We can say, so the first thing was the day, right? And we can say day, and then we can say month, and then we can say year, and then we're going to say equals to double AR, like this. And I'm going to click that. And if we say console.log day, you'll notice that it's going to give us the 31st. And if we were to console.log month, you'll notice that it's going to give us the month as well. And if we do the same thing with the year, it's going to give us that year as well. So object destructuring is a very important feature inside ECMAScript because it allows us not only to access the elements inside of the array, but it allows us to initialize those elements that are inside of the array. So previously, in order to actually declare these objects, we would have to at least say day. So let me just say day 1 so that I don't conflict with the variable that has already been declared. So I'm going to just say day 1. At first, I would have to do something like this in order to declare this new variable. But now you could see that object destructuring has made it much more easier for us to declare a variable and at the same time access that variable. So that is the beauty of object destructuring. So you can imagine if you have many different things and you would like to access them individually, so this feature, it tends to be very useful. So previously we talked about objects, and remember when we created that object, that person object, and we say person is equals to, let me see if I can still access that object, because okay, so I cannot access that object, so I'm going to have to declare it afresh. So I'm going to just say person, yeah, just like that. So there's our object. So object destructuring actually allows us to access elements inside of the array in a much more similar way to array destructuring. So we can just simply come over here and say const, and then we can say name and age. So let me say person. And just like that, we've managed to access those items inside of the object. And if we were to console log each of these elements, the name and the age, you'll notice that they are printed accordingly to our console. So this is a very good feature. It just allows us to access elements inside of our object without any hassle, without having to do person.name or anything like that. So this again allows us to create or declare a variable, so automatically declare a variable. So that is the importance of this object destructuring. It's very similar to array destructuring if you paid attention to array destructuring. So another aspect of ES6 is ES modules. So ES modules is a way, I'm actually going to go to my project for this. So ES modules is actually a way to export variables, functions, and classes from a module and reuse them in other modules. So an ES6 module is a JavaScript file that executes in strict mode only, and it means that any variable or functions declared in the module won't be automatically added to the global scope. So that means you have to physically add them yourself to the global scope. Now, before we use ES6, there's a very important configuration. Before we use the module, we need to declare a file as a module. So we come over here and we say type and we say module. And just like that, this app.js file now becomes a module. So that means we can come over here and we can, we've already created this file, so all it does over here is just return hello world. And then after we're done with this file, what we can do is that we can just simply export this file. So that's what ES6 allows us to do. We can come over here and say export, say hello. So this is a better way of exporting something than what we're used to. In fact, you know what? Instead of exporting it here, I think it would be best if we export it in such a manner. Alright, so now this is the way that we are going to export our variables. We can also, actually our function, we can also export a variable as well. So first let me just get rid of this and just use let. I can export this variable as well. That's good. And this module attribute allows us to import that variable that we've declared at the very top, easily import. So I'm going to just say app.js, app1.js, and I'm going to try and put that inside of our HTML again, app1. So that means the app1 is also a module type. So now it's going to allow me to import the thing that I've exported over here. So I'm going to try and import the name. So I'm going to import name from app.js like that. And then immediately I just want to console log. So fingers crossed that this works. Okay, so I'm going to say use template literals. This is the variable that I exported. Use template literals to add that variable inside of the string. I'm going to come over to our, oh, would you look at that? Oh, actually, because it was exported without the default, then that means we're going to have to use some curly brackets over here. If we had put default in there, then it would not give us this problem. So you could see this is the variable that I exported, coding 101. So it's as simple as that. It allows us to create a variable and also export it. So let me just show you how it would work with default. So default would work in this way. Actually, I think maybe if we were to get this over here, export default name like that, then we could directly access the variable without putting in those curly brackets in there. And if we go back to our application, you could see that it still works. You can refresh it so that you can see for yourself. So you can see that it still works properly. Alright, so ES modules essentially allow us to do anything like that. I mean, maybe you want me to use this thing as well, this function as well. You want to see how the function works. So I'm going to try and import the function as well. So it's say hello. Unfortunately, because that was in the default export can only exist once inside of a JS file. You can't do two default exports. So unfortunately for the function, say hello, we're going to have to use the curly brackets. And remember that function just simply returns hello world. So I'm just going to implement that. I'm just going to call that function over here. Say hello, just like that. And if we go back to our application, you can see that this line was executed. That's line 5 over here. So it was executed. We've successfully imported that function and used it in another file. So that's what the type module allows you to do. It just allows you to, not that you couldn't do this, you couldn't export. Actually, could you? I don't think you could, because I think I might be confusing this with Node.js. Either it was difficult to do it, or it was not plain out doable. So ES6 has made it much more easier to import and export your stuff in your JavaScript files. Okay, and then the other thing that ES6 has introduced is the use of arrow functions. So arrow functions are a bit similar to your regular classic functions, but they are more concise. So ES6 arrow functions provide you simply with an alternative way to write a shorter syntax compared to the function expression. So let's say, for example, we have something like this. We create a function in this way. We're going to function expression. When we say function, so this is an add function, so it just allows us to add two variables together and return the sum. So that's going to be x plus 1. So this is probably the old-fashioned way to do it. If we were to console log this, you could and use an example. We could use maybe 120, and 100. So this should give us 220. If my mathematics is correct. If we go to our first, let's get rid of these two distractions that we see over here, so that we don't get too much distracted. We no longer have any need for all of those. So now, if we were to go to our file, you can see that 220 is printed to our console. So another way of actually implementing this function with an arrow function, and there's the equivalent way to actually do this expression, would simply be just saying let add equal to xy, and then make that arrow function and say x plus y. So you can see how this is very short and concise. So I'm just going to say add 1 over there, or maybe let's say add 2, because add 1 is the one at the top. So this is another way of implementing. So you can see how this one is much shorter and much more concise than the one that you had declared at the very top. So this over here is an arrow function. The reason why it's an arrow function is because of this arrow that you see over here. Now, if we were to have only one parameter over here, we have the option to omit the curly bracket. And that is only in the case that we had only one parameter. Because we have two parameters, that means we're going to have to put those brackets over here. And if our method is a bit longer, then we can still use the curly brackets over here. But if our implementation of the function, let me say, is a bit shorter, then we can just omit the curly bracket for now. So I'm going to show you how this works, or maybe prove it to you. So I'm just going to add 2. This is going to give me, I'm going to give it, 20 and 70. That's going to give me 90. And if we go to our console, and there you have it, 90 on your console. So these are the arrow function. It's the syntax that came with ES6 and has really helped us write a more concise way of writing functions, or find a more concise way of writing functions, rather. So arrow functions are really good to use if you prefer them, but it's still okay if you can use your regular function, it's still fine. It doesn't really matter that much. So ES6 also came with promises. So promises, I have a video that covers promises, and that video, it's a very short video actually. So I prefer that you watch that video, but I'm still going to explain it to you how these promises work. So promises is something, let's say you are executing a function and you don't know how long that function is going to take. So you want to wrap that function around a promise so that the moment that function finishes executing, then it gives you the results that you want, or it gives you an error message, and you want to handle that error within a promise. So a promise is like a singer who promises his fans that he's going to give them a show. So I'm promising my fans that I'm going to give them a show, and if the show is becomes successful, I'm going to tell my fans that, okay, I've managed to talk with management and the show is going to be on this particular date. And if something happened, or maybe the stadium goes on fire, then I tell my fans that the show is cancelled because of this and this reasons. So a promise always culminates in two ways. Either the positive side, it results in the positive sides, in a positive result, or it resolves in a negative result. And these two, you have to find a way to communicate inside of your promise. So it is as simple as that. I'm not going to go too much into a promise because, like I said, I do have a short video that really talks about promises and asynchronous programming. So that's the thing that ES6 has actually introduced, is asynchronous programming, async await. So just please go back and look at all those things, and they're going to be very much, you're going to find them very important to you, yeah. And so the other thing that we're going to learn about is a map. ES6 has come up with its own set of collections. So before these two, the only thing that we had known about was an array. So now ES6 has introduced other things, other collections as well. So this one is actually known as a map. So before ES6 we would use an object to emulate a map by mapping a key to a value. So you'd often use an object to emulate a map by mapping a key to a value of any type. But using an object as a map has some side effects. An object always has a default key like the prototype. If you're not familiar with a prototype, just Google prototype, or maybe comment in the comment section and I will do a video that goes into detail about a prototype. So the map function just simply connects a value, a key to a value. So it's just similar to the objects that we have declared at the very top, but except a map has a very different prototype, like I said. So it has a set of methods that makes it so much easier to use than the object. So really, map is sort of like a lifesaver. I would prefer to use map than anything else. So let's say maybe you want to create like user roles inside of user roles. So you want to have the name of the person and you want to assign them a particular role. So we simply come over here and we create a map. So we say user roles is equals to new map like this, and then we say user roles. We can simply set that key value pair. So this is going to be coding 101, and I'm going to assign you the responsibility of being a web developer. And just like that, we've put in a new key value pair inside of our map collection. And we can also do more. We can say set, I'm going to just say Kutlo, and then I'm going to put in here tutor. So this is how we would assign or put in those key value pair or add elements to a map. It's just simply using that set type of object function that is found in the prototype of map. So there are a couple of methods that are associated with map, and I'm not going to go around them. But maybe if you're interested again in that tutorial, please make sure you leave a comment in the comment section, and I'll be happy to create a tutorial that goes into detail with regarding map. But that is simply a new way of creating objects inside, or storing objects rather, inside of our map collection. So I'm going to go to maybe the last aspect of our ES6, and the last aspect of our ES6 is the rest parameter. So the rest parameter allows a function to treat an indefinite number of arguments as an array. So let's say maybe you want to create a function that adds many different numbers together. So you want to create a function called sum, and you want to give it all the numbers that you could maybe think of, or something like that. So normally you would, in order to do this, you would just say, let's say sum, and then you would like add, let's say maybe numbers. So this is actually the problem right here, because like declaring a parameter like this, maybe let's say num1, num2, num3, is a bit limited, because like it limits the way we can actually encapsulate all those arguments. Maybe we want to encapsulate many different arguments, maybe like 100 arguments or 1,000 arguments inside of here. So how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we allow the user to come over here and, calling this function, put in an indefinite amount of variables or arguments, let me say. So how do we allow the user to be able to do that? Maybe he wants to put in like 2 arguments or 3 arguments or 4 arguments. So the rest parameter allows us to do this. In order to use the rest parameter, what we would simply do is to use those 3 spread operator. That's spread operator, but in this case it's not a spread operator, it's a rest parameter. So we would just say args to say arguments, but this could be anything. You can say args, you can say parameter, you can say numbers, it doesn't really matter. And then over here, now because we assume that those numbers can be as many numbers that we can have, so over here we use the for loop, and we say for arguments, or let me say numbers, num in args, num of args, let me say. For num of args, what I want you to do is that I want you to do this sum plus equal arg. So if you're not familiar with what this plus equal is, I have a JavaScript tutorial that is going to teach you about this assignment operator that you see over here. So yeah, and then after that, after we're done using this for loop, we can just simply return the sum. So once again, the rest parameter just simply allows us to be able to allow the user to enter as many arguments to a function as they can. You can also, like if you want, you can also put in some more arguments over here. So maybe you can say argument B, but I want the last argument to be as many arguments as possible. So you can capture a couple of arguments first, and then you want the other arguments to be an infinite number of arguments as possible. But we don't want to do that in this case. We just want that infinite number of argument. So what this function is going to do is that it's going to calculate the sum of all these integers that we've put in there as a parameter. So let's just console log this so that we can see it properly on the console log. And if we were to save this and go to the console log, you could see, okay, args is not defined. Let's see that we have defined everything correctly. So this is actually a spelling error more than anything. So let's go back to our application, make sure that right, so I'm just going to say let over here. And so if we were to refresh, oh my goodness, I think maybe I'm in too much of a hurry. So hopefully it should work this time around. It says undefined, and I don't know why it says undefined. So let's figure out what the problem could be. Oh, it's because we have not returned our sum. Very clumsy today. So hopefully if we go back, we'll be able to get this. What the hell is this? I don't want to console log all that. Okay. Okay, so I'm supposed to say num over here. Alright, and there we have it. There we go, finally. So if we were to, we have the, because we've used the rest parameter, we have the ability to reduce the amount of parameters as we wish. So now you can see that the number is 10, and if we can add as many as we want, and it's going to calculate that sum for us accordingly. So there are many features that are involved inside of the ES6 module, or the ES6. It's not a module, sorry. So inside of ES6, there's a new way of actually declaring a class that you can learn about. I am probably going to put in a website where you can learn about some of these features inside of there that can really help you. And ES6 also comes up with a new collection called set. So set just allows you to hold a collection of unique values. So I think that one is much easier to implement. So let me just do it right here for you. So you would just say a set of numbers. So let's say at the very top you declare numbers, and these numbers, they have duplicates inside of them, and you want only the unique ones. So you can actually use set in order to achieve that. So you can just say const set num is going to be new set. So what set is going to do is it's going to filter out your array, and it's going to give you a unique array with unique elements inside of them. So if we were to console log that and go back to our console, you'll see that, oh, wait, hold up, this is supposed to be set num. Okay, almost gave me a heart attack. So you can see now that all the variables that have been declared that are inside of our set are actually unique values and nothing else. So that is how the set collection actually works. It filters your array to just only give you those unique values that you actually probably need, or anything like that. So ES6 also comes up with a few array extensions. You have array.off, you have array.from, which creates array from array-like or iterable objects, and then array.find, which simply finds an element inside of an array. And you have also array.findIndex, which simply finds the index of an element inside of an array. You also have object extensions. Object.assign simply copies an object or merges object. Object.is checks if the two values are the same value. So it checks if two values are the same value. So you also have new string extensions as well. So you might want to check those up too. I'm going to provide you with the link so that you can look at all these new ES6 features. So I'm going to do an article, and I'm going to put all those new features in that article so that you can read up more on them. But other than that, I think what we've covered is most of the features that are used in everyday life and in the everyday life of a programmer. And I think we're going to stop here. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Remember to also like this video. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. My name is Kuklo. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time in Coding 101.